I want to talk about Apple and Epic Games. Is there a good video about the Apple Epic Games trial and result? Okay, this one's all from the perspective of Fortnite. All right, I'll take a look. It's a little shorter.
Fortnite decided to do something pretty unprecedented and bring their insanely popular PC and console game over to the mobile platform. Now, on the surface, it seems like this decision won't move the needle very much in terms of the reach of Fortnite and the Fortnite player base.
All right, it's probably not for us. That's first of all. I just thought it'd be funny to see a Fortnite POV, but I'm not so interested in someone talking about just Fortnite. All right, well, I was eating the whole time, so I'll just talk about it. Let's do a little paint. All right, you got an iPhone? iPhone. If you use anything on it, any app on it, they get 30%. Bang, bang, boom. Okay? That doesn't mean just buying the app. That also means in-app purchases. That includes skins in Fortnite, etc. Epic Games and Tim Sweeney were like, hey, bro, we don't want to pay that. That's a third of our profit. So we're going to make an online web-based store where you can buy this. And then in the app, tell you to click this button to launch the store so you can buy it directly from us. Apple obviously doesn't want that. They want to keep getting their 30% juice. So they froze the app. They banned the app. They basically said it's against our rules. You not only can't have an outside store, but you can't tell anyone about an outside store. Okay? Apple lost their shit. They blocked it. This became a huge lawsuit where Tim Sweeney stood up for oppressed developers and game developers and apps everywhere and decided we're going to spend hundreds of millions of dollars fighting this in court for our benefit, but also for everyone else's benefit. They're also doing the same thing with Google. I think it is one of the most based things a billionaire like Tim Sweeney has ever done. Now, he's doing it for his own personal company's profit, but at the end of the day, they were big enough they could have gotten a sweetheart deal with Apple and ignored it. Instead, they stood up and they have fought it for years in court for, again, hundreds of millions of dollars. They spent $100+ million on legal fees, and they've also lost money from not having Fortnite on the App Store. Again, the amount they've lost could be upwards of $1 billion because they haven't had all of the money they've made. They were making hundreds of millions at the time. There's a lot of money they lost to do this. So it is actually like a pretty big deal. They've stuck to their guns and fought this out. And they're doing the same lawsuit against Google and still fighting that. It's pretty crazy. I'm impressed with Tim Sweeney. I don't like him on everything. I like him on this. Now, there's a few apps that are big enough to have market power. This would be like Amazon that have these sweetheart deals with Apple where they can push you to a different offline landing page. But even then, they were not allowed to promote it. Netflix is the big example. Netflix, YouTube, just really big key apps that can push you off platform, but they're not allowed to promote it. And one thing that Apple was specific about was like, hey, you can have a other landing page, but if you talk about it or you push it to be the primary thing, you're violating our terms of service. And they would do underhanded shit too, not just like ban your app, but like make it slower and harder to update. They would just do little annoying things that made it a pain in the ass if you didn't follow their rules and have the pay through Apple where they got their fee, okay? And it's underhanded and it's shitty and it's monopolistic. A few years ago, the court ruled in Epic Games' favor. And they basically said, hey, you have to allow people to be able to have an offline land or an online landing page where they don't have to do this system. Okay, they have to have a choice. And Apple said, okay, but you can't promote it. You can't talk about it. You can't do anything. So they can have a landing page, but you can't talk about it. And so the judge recently ruled, hey, Apple, what you're doing is in violation of our original ruling. What you're doing is not in the spirit of the law. You're still f***ing over customers, f***ing over apps that want to have a separate landing page. Now they said, hey, no f***ing around. They have to have complete freedom to be able to pay elsewhere and talk about being able to pay elsewhere. That was the judge's ruling. Now, Apple is still going to appeal this, but for now, they have lost in the United States. In fact, this is one of the areas where the US is actually ahead of Europe on regulating a monopoly. In fact, Apple has changed its TOS to be like, you can't do this, this, and this unless you're in America. The TOS literally says you cannot push someone to an outside payment platform unless you're in America. So in this case, it's a pretty big deal. It's pretty impressive. And it's, I think, an overall good thing for consumers. Again, consumers do not lose in any way by being able to have multiple options for paying. If you really like the convenience of paying through Apple, you can give them 30%. But the developer is allowed to push you to this situation. And what's cool about this is not only does it create an option where the developer gets 100% of their money on the game that they created, they don't have to give a tax to Apple, but it also makes Apple have to compete and make this better. There's many stagnating bad things about paying through Apple. You can't get refunds easily. Like a developer can't offer you a refund. A developer cannot know if you canceled a payment, like why. They can't ask you why or do a survey. There's a lot of things that developers have been begging for with the Apple payment plan. They don't do because they don't care. They've had a monopoly. They don't have any reason to innovate or update or make this payment plan better. Now they do. So long story short, this is a pretty monumental breakthrough case. Tim Sweeney, I give a lot of respect for doing this, especially when investors in Epic Games probably wanted him to drop it. They probably wanted to be like, okay, just take a deal with Apple. We're big enough to get around this. We'll get a sweetheart deal and everyone else can we'll be fine. Like they lost a lot of money and I respect it. I do respect it. I think this is pretty cool. So long story short, that's what happened. And I think unless Apple wins the appeal, which they might, they got good lawyers, this will overall lead to a much better app ecosystem where more companies can get more of the money out of their apps they make and not have to give all the profits to the gatekeepers. The weird thing that would happen is if somehow Epic loses the case with Google, they should win both. But if somehow they lose the case with Google, well, then it's a weird thing where now Google gets 30%, but Apple doesn't. That would be weird. It needs to win against both. So that's the ideal outcome. Long story short, we're launching Get to Work on mobile. Get Tim Cook. And we're adding skins to it. So it's 100% to us. And so within the week or whatever is the idea is that Fortnite will now be back on iOS. And it will have an easy to click button that goes to web where you can buy skins and subs and whatever. You can make in-app purchases without you doing it through Apple. If Apple in any way tries to stop that or make it slower or not let them update or hide the link to go off platform, they're going to get in court because the judge was very clear that they'll 100% facilitate. And I guess another big thing will be for Twitch. There should be for Twitch an ability to click and buy subs without using in-app payments. Because again, they cost more on iOS because of the 30% cut. Does this open up the door for other payment processors to be integrated into apps, not just external links? From my understanding, no, as it stands. I mean, it opens up the door for sure. It's a step in the right direction. Ideally, we have full interoperability where someone can make their own payment or any type of system and it happens right in the app. The only reason you should use Apple is if it's by choice because it's better, not for any other. It shouldn't mandate it at all. But I think for now, it's just web. It's just you can click out to web. Patreon's new app right now, after this court case, can now accept web payments. This is right now. You can now get a Patreon. They can easily show you the web version. You can pay it and there's no Apple cut. This is something that's beneficial. So on iOS, it's $14.50. On web, it's 10. People are going to start being able to see this. Again, the reason Apple wanted to hide this for so long is because it makes their thing look like an obvious tax, which it is. Which it is. Like Apple has known that if consumers can choose the non-tax version, they will always do it. And so now they have to actually compete. Now they have to actually make it worthwhile in some way. It's like an Apple tariff, dude. So that is a good example. Patreon, Twitch, all these places should have more easy access to get rid of the Apple tax. The idea that, you know, a ton of iOS users were giving 30% of their Patreon money to Apple for no real reason is crazy. How's 30% for Amazon and eBay? I think both of them are big enough to have exemptions. They have gotten sweetheart deals with Apple where they don't have to give the cut. And so Apple basically said, like, if you're big enough to hurt us by canceling your app, we will lower our cut. But if you're anyone else, get f***ed. And that's why it was cool what Epic Games did, because they are big enough to probably have negotiated a sweetheart deal, but instead said, nah, we're going to fight for this. And it helps everyone. This kind of sums it up. For the reasons set forth herein, the court finds Apple in willful violation of this court's 2021 injunction, which issued to restrain and prohibit Apple's anti-competitive conduct and anti-competitive pricing. Apple's continued attempts to interfere with competition will not be tolerated. It's actually based, because we covered this in 2021 and we were talking about how Apple will find a lot of loopholes to get around it. They did, and the court said, hey, we're not stupid. We made a law. You're not following the spirit of it. And that's cool. Man, I am so shocked and impressed at how much antitrust stuff has, especially against big tech, has continued into this administration. It's like the one area that has continued and has not died. It's just kept going. Like there's a lot of big cases against Meta and Google and Apple in this case that have continued and are going strong as ever. It was not my expectation going in. The agency has been revitalized and it is still working. I'm impressed. Especially because a lot of these companies, Meta, Google, Amazon, have all spent a lot of money to, I don't know, bribe Trump. They spent $1 million at the inauguration. And I think a lot of them thought, okay, that'll be it. I'm done. We're out of it. But instead, all the shit is kept going and is making serious judgments. Did I say Amazon? You get what I mean. Apple, Azon, the megacorp when they merge.